For 15 years, the woman's womb remained empty. Every doctor said the same thing. Unexplained infertility. Her husband spent millions, flew across the world, begged the top reproductive endocrinologists to look again. They all shrugged. Then a maid noticed something in the medicine cabinet no one else did. And what she did next would shatter a 15-year lie. Sebastian Thornfield was a billionaire. Tech empires, private islands, more money than most dynasties see in a century. But his wife, Isabelle, was barren. 15 years of marriage, not a single heartbeat. Sebastian tried everything. Swiss clinics, Japanese specialists, secretive programs in California. Doctors who charged more per consultation than a luxury car. They ran tests, performed procedures, and prescribed cocktails of hope in little brown bottles. All of them said the same thing. Medically complex. Manage your expectations. But Sebastian couldn't accept it because Isabelle was his entire world. His foundation. And watching her hope die, month after month, year after year, was a grief that poisoned the very air they breathed. So he did the only thing his world taught him to do. He spent more money. He funded research. He trusted the man he was supposed to trust most. His own brother-in-law, Dr. Richard Ashford, the head of a renowned fertility institute. What he didn't know was that the answer wasn't coming from a gleaming lab or a doctor with framed credentials. It was coming from the woman he'd just hired to clean his wife's bedroom. Lucia Reyes was a maid. 24. No medical degree. No formal training. Just a young woman trying to pay her father's mounting hospital bills back in a small Mexican village. But she noticed something about Isabelle's regimen that every specialist had missed. Something in the combination of pills, something her mother, a traditional midwife, had warned her about. And one afternoon, while Sebastian was away at his empire, she made a decision that would either give Isabelle the child she dreamed of, or destroy Lucia's life forever. What happened next? You need to see it for yourself. This story found you for a reason. Before we continue, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments. Have you ever felt that a gut feeling was wiser than an expert's opinion? The Thornfield estate sprawled across 50 acres of Napa Valley vineyard. From the outside, it looked like a fantasy. Sun-drenched stone terraces, infinity pools that melted into the horizon, gardens so perfect they looked painted. But inside, a hollow stillness. Not the quiet of peace, but the silence of a museum after hours. Of a gallery where the most precious portrait was missing. Staff moved through the hallways like ghosts. Their voices were hushed, their smiles practiced and brief. They'd learned. Mr. and Mrs. Thornfield existed in a bubble of unspoken grief. No children's laughter ever echoed in the cavernous playroom. No tiny footsteps pattered on the imported marble. Just the oppressive, expensive silence. And in the master suite, a woman was fading away. Isabelle Thornfield sat at her vanity most evenings, staring not at her reflection, but at the lineup of brown glass bottles. Her nightly ritual. Hormones, supplements, inhibitors, boosters. A pharmacy of hope and failure. Each one prescribed by Richard, her brother-in-law. 15 years. 15 years of needles that bruised her skin. Procedures that left her cramping and empty. Hopes that soared every month only to crash in a crimson wave of loss. The worst part wasn't the failure. It was the look in Sebastian's eyes afterward. Not disappointment in her, but a furious, helpless determination. He'd just squeeze her hand and say, "We'll try the next thing. Richard has a new protocol." And the cycle would begin again. She loved Sebastian for his relentless hope. But she hated the medicine. She hated what it did to her body, her mind, her spirit. She felt like a battlefield, fought over by warring scientific theories. And she was losing. Sebastian Thornfield stood in his glass-walled office, staring at the vineyards but seeing only spreadsheets and timelines. His guilt was a cold, hard knot in his stomach. He'd built an empire from nothing. He could solve impossible problems, broker world-changing deals. Yet he could not give his wife the one thing she truly wanted. He'd failed her. So he attacked the problem like he did everything else. With money, influence, and sheer force of will. He trusted Richard implicitly. The man was family. He was the best in the world. If Richard couldn't fix it, it couldn't be fixed. He never stopped to consider that the problem wasn't Isabelle's body. The problem was the prescription. He didn't realize the miracle wasn't waiting in a futuristic lab. It was walking up his driveway with a single suitcase, a prayer on her lips, and the ancient, forgotten wisdom of her mother's hands. Her name was Lucia, and she was about to tear his perfect, silent world apart. Lucia Reyes arrived on a Wednesday. The sky was the color of old chalk. She stood at the giant iron gate of the Thornfield estate, clutching her one suitcase. Her heart beat hard against her ribs. This job was her father's last chance. A tall, severe woman opened the door. Mrs. Whitmore. Her eyes were like two dark stones. "You will clean. You will be silent. You will be invisible," she said, her voice leaving no room for questions. "The lady of the house, Mrs. Thornfield, is not to be disturbed. The last girl who tried to be a friend was gone in 3 days. Do you understand?" "Yes, ma'am," Lucia whispered. "I am here to work." The house was a museum of quiet. The air was still and heavy, like a held breath. Servants moved without sound. Lucia kept her eyes down, but she saw everything. Then she saw her. In the sunroom, a woman sat perfectly still. She was beautiful, dressed in soft, expensive clothes, but she looked like a statue of sadness. Her shoulders were curved inward. Her hands lay limp in her lap. Her eyes stared at nothing. That was Isabelle Thornfield. A deep ache spread in Lucia's chest. She knew that look. Over the next few days, Lucia cleaned. She polished the endless wood floors. She wiped the giant windows that looked out on perfect gardens. And she watched. She saw the lines of medicine bottles in Isabelle's bathroom. 17 of them. She saw Isabelle's hands shake every morning as she took the pills. She recognized some of the names from her mother's warnings long ago. She saw Isabelle stand for long minutes outside a closed door at the end of a hallway. A nursery, Lucia guessed. The woman would just stand there, her hand resting on the doorknob, but never turn it. One afternoon, a broken sound pulled Lucia from her work. A soft, gasping cry. She followed it to the garden. Isabelle was on a stone bench, hidden by rose bushes. Her face was in her hands, her body shaking with silent sobs. On the ground beside her, next to empty medicine bottles, was a white plastic stick. Pregnancy test. A single line. Lucia's feet moved before her mind could stop them. She knelt on the gravel path, not too close. "Senora?" Isabelle flinched, looking up with red, shocked eyes. She quickly wiped her face. "I'm fine. You can go." But Lucia didn't move. She saw the raw pain. She heard her mother's voice. "If you see a woman suffering, 15 years, Isabelle whispered, the words escaping like a confession. "Every doctor says the same thing. Keep trying. Stay on the protocol." She kicked the test with her shoe. "Nothing works." "The protocol?" Lucia asked gently. "My brother-in-law, Dr. Ashford. He's a famous specialist. He's been treating me since the beginning." Her voice was flat, dead. 15 years of his medicines. One miscarriage. Then nothing. Lucia's blood ran cold. 15 years. Same doctor. No baby. Her mother's words screamed in her memory. "Mrs. Thornfield. In my village, my mother was a healer. She helped women the doctors had given up on." Isabelle let out a tired, hollow laugh. "I don't need folk stories. I need a miracle." "I know," Lucia said softly. She started to stand, to leave. "Wait." Isabelle's hand shot out and caught her wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Her eyes searched Lucia's face. What did she do? That was different. Lucia sat back down. She said, "Sometimes the medicine fights the body. It tries to fix one thing but breaks the thing you need most. The body knows how to heal, if you let it." Isabelle was very still. She looked at the row of empty bottles. Then she looked back at Lucia, and for the first time, Lucia saw a tiny crack in the wall of her despair. "Your mother? She really helped women?" "Yes, ma'am. Many." Isabelle stared at her for a long time. The wind rustled the rose bushes. When she finally spoke, Her voice was so quiet Lucia almost didn't hear it. "Can you help me?" The question hung in the air. Lucia thought of her father's sickbed. She thought of Mrs. Whitmore's warning. She thought of prison cells and lost jobs. Then she looked into Isabelle Thornfield's eyes, full of 15 years of lonely agony. She took a deep breath. "Yes," Lucia said. "I can try." The next week, an envelope appeared on Lucia's cleaning cart. Inside was cash, more than she made in a month. A note said, "For your father. No one should lose their family. Isabelle." Lucia's eyes filled with tears. She found Isabelle in the garden that afternoon, staring at the roses. Lucia held out the envelope. "Mrs. Thornfield, I cannot take this." "Please," Isabelle said, her voice quiet. "Let me do this one good thing. It is too much kindness." "It's not kindness," Isabelle said. "It's hope. You have a father to fight for. Let this help you fight. It gives me a reason." She looked at the medicine bottles on a nearby table. "After 15 years of that, I need a reason." Lucia put the envelope down and sat beside her. "My mother's wisdom. It is not magic. It is work. It asks you to stop the fight inside your own body." Isabelle picked up a bottle, turning it in her hand. "Tell me what to do." The quiet command was all Lucia needed. The pact was sealed. "First," Lucia said, her voice firm with a certainty that came from generations, "we stop the drug. Then we begin the healing." 2 days later, the house was quiet. Sebastian was away on business. Mrs. Whitmore was in the city. In the bedroom, Isabelle waited, nervous. Lucia entered, carrying a small wooden box. She locked the door behind her. "This was my mother's," Lucia said, opening the box. Inside were bottles of oil. They smelled like herbs and flowers. "It is called Sabeda, a healing massage. For your womb." She said the word softly. "To wake it up. To bring back its balance." Isabelle laid back on the bed. Lucia warmed the oil between her palms. Her hands were strong, but gentle. She placed them low on Isabelle's belly. The touch was warm. It was the first touch Isabelle had felt in years that wasn't a doctor's cold probe or a nurse's sharp needle. This was different. This was kind. Lucia began to move her hands in slow, firm circles. She hummed a little an old song from her village. The smell of lavender and chamomile filled the air. The tight, cold knot of pain and sadness that Isabelle always carried inside her began to loosen. A single tear rolled from Isabelle's eye into her hair. "It doesn't hurt," she whispered, amazed. "It should not hurt," Lucia said softly. "Your body is not the enemy. We are asking it to remember, not to fight." For 20 minutes, Lucia worked. The room was silent except for their breathing and the soft sound of her hands. A feeling of deep, heavy warmth spread through Isabelle. Felt like hope. Felt like safety. When it was over, Isabelle sat up. She felt loose and calm. She looked at the line of medicine bottles on her nightstand. "What about these?" she asked. Lucia's face became serious. "The Sabeda, it is like planting seeds in good soil. But those pills," she looked at the bottles. "They are like poison in that soil. The seeds cannot grow." Isabelle understood. She walked to the nightstand. She picked up the bottles one by one. She carried them to the bathroom. Lucia followed. Without a word, Isabelle opened the trash can. She dropped the first bottle in. It landed with a final clink. Then the next, and the next. The sound was like stones falling. She kept one bottle. She handed it to Lucia. "Hide this, in case he asks." They looked at each other. The empty shelf, the full trash, the secret between them. It was a pact. "We have started," Lucia said. Isabelle placed a hand on her own stomach, where the warmth still lingered. For the first time in 15 years, she felt a flicker of real power. "We have," she said. It was their first secret. The secret sessions became their weekly ritual. Every Thursday morning, while Sebastian was at his office, Lucia would unlock the bedroom door. Isabelle began to change. The gray tiredness under her eyes faded. Her headaches, which she thought were normal, stopped. She felt a new energy, a warmth in her belly that stayed. She caught herself smiling at nothing. She planted new flowers in the garden, bright, bold colors. "I feel alive," she whispered to Lucia one day. "I feel like myself." Lucia felt joy seeing the hope in Isabelle's eyes. But with each week, her own fear grew. She hid the empty pill bottles in a bag under her bed. Every sound in the big house made her jump. She knew the risk. If they were caught, Isabelle would be heartbroken, but Lucia would be ruined. She would lose everything, her job, her father's hope, maybe even her freedom. One Thursday, the turning point came. They were in the middle of the sabata. The room was warm and smelled of rosemary oil. Isabelle was relaxed, her eyes closed. Suddenly, a sound. The heavy front door slammed shut downstairs. A voice called out, "Isabelle? I'm home early." It was Sebastian. Panic shot through the room. Isabelle sat up, eyes wide. Lucia's hands froze. They heard his footsteps in the hall. "Quick!" Isabelle hissed, pulling her robe on. Lucia moved faster than she ever had. She snapped the oil bottle shut, shoved it and her towels into the wooden box. She shoved the box under the bed just as the footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Isabelle flew to the bedroom door, unlocked it, and threw it open just as Sebastian's hand reached for the knob. He stood there, surprised. "There you are. Why was the door locked?" Isabelle's heart hammered. She forced a smile. "Oh, I was just changing. I had a headache and was lying down." She stepped out, pulling the door mostly closed behind her, blocking his view of the room. Lucia stood frozen inside, pressed against the wall by the bed, holding her breath. Sebastian looked past Isabelle, his gaze sweeping the room. He saw nothing out of place, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "I called your phone. You didn't answer." "I must have left it downstairs," Isabelle said, her voice too bright. She took his arm and gently turned him away from the door. "Tell me about your meeting. How did it go?" She led him down the hall. As they walked away, Lucia let out a shaky breath. She could hear Isabelle's nervous laughter fading. The close call was over, but the air had changed. The secret, once safe in the silent house, now felt thin and exposed. Sebastian's suspicion was a new, quiet enemy in the hallway. The real danger had just begun. It happened the next week. Sebastian's flight home was cancelled. He came back early, but he didn't call. He just walked into the house, wanting to surprise Isabelle. He heard the soft music first, a Spanish song coming from their bedroom. His wife never played music. He walked up the stairs, confused. He heard low voices, his wife's sigh. He pushed the bedroom door open. The scene froze. Isabelle was on the bed. The maid, Lucia, stood over her, her hands on Isabelle's bare stomach. Bottles of strange oil sat on the nightstand. The air smelled like a forest, thick and wild. For a second, no one moved. Then Sebastian's world exploded. "What is this?" His roar shook the room. Isabelle screamed, scrambling to cover herself. Lucia jumped back, her hands in the air, oil shining on her fingers. "Sebastian, please," Isabelle cried. "She is helping me," Isabelle said, her voice shaking. "Helping you?" Sebastian stared at the maid's hands on his wife's skin. Rage, hot and blind, took over. "You! What did you do to her?" Lucia opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Sebastian didn't wait. He grabbed his phone. He called one person. "Richard, get here. Now, it's Isabelle. Something's wrong." Dr. Ashford arrived in 20 minutes. He listened, his face growing dark and serious, as Sebastian raged about the oils, the touching, the secret rituals. Ashford put a hand on Sebastian's shoulder. "You did the right thing. This is very serious." He looked at Lucia with cold, doctor's eyes. "What did you give her? What did you put in those oils?" "Nothing. It is just plants for massage." Lucia tried to explain. "She stopped taking her medicines." Sebastian shouted, pointing at the trash where Isabelle had hidden the empty bottles. Ashford's eyes widened, a perfect performance of shock. "You stopped your treatment? Isabelle, those were keeping you stable." He turned to Sebastian, his voice low and grave. This is medical fraud. This is assault. She has no license. She could have caused internal damage, infertility, or worse. The word assault hung in the air, changed everything. Sebastian's fear found a target. Call the police, he said, his voice flat and cold. Now, Isabelle screamed. No, Sebastian, listen to me. She helped me. I feel better. But it was too late. The doctor had spoken. His word was law. 2 police officers came. They listened to the rich husband and the famous doctor. They did not listen to the crying wife or the silent maid. They put handcuffs on Lucia's small wrists. The metal clicked, cold and final. Isabelle, I'm sorry, Lucia whispered, her eyes full of tears. No, let her go. Isabelle fought, but Sebastian held her back. They took Lucia away. Isabelle's screams followed them down the stairs. Raw, awful sounds of a heart breaking. The door closed. The house was silent again. But it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence after a bomb has gone off. Everything was in pieces. Isabelle looked at her husband, her eyes empty. You took my hope away. Sebastian looked back, sure he had saved her. I protected you. He didn't know he had just broken everything. 3 weeks later, Isabelle woke up feeling different. Her body felt heavy. Her breasts were tender. A strange, metallic taste was in her mouth. A feeling she'd never felt before, but somehow new. Hope, dangerous and wild, beat in her chest. She waited until Sebastian left for work. She drove to a pharmacy far from the house. She bought a simple blue box. Back home, in the giant master bathroom, she did the test. She set the plastic stick on the edge of the marble sink and turned away. She couldn't watch. She counted to 100. When she turned around, her legs went weak. 2 lines. Dark and clear. 2 lines. A sound escaped her. A gasp, a laugh, a sob. She slid down the cold wall onto the floor, clutching the test. She cried and cried, her tears falling on the 2 dark lines. 15 years of emptiness filled in a single moment. Lucia, she thought. It worked. She had to tell Sebastian. He would see. He would understand. He would fix everything. She called him. Come home. Now, it's important. When Sebastian arrived, she met him in the foyer. She didn't speak. She just held out the plastic stick. He looked at it. His face went blank. What is this? It's a pregnancy test, Sebastian. I can see that, he said, his voice quiet. He took it from her, his hand trembling slightly. He stared at the 2 lines. A dozen emotions fought on his face. Shock, a flash of incredible joy, and then, crushing it all, deep suspicion. How? This is impossible. Richard said. Richard was wrong. Isabelle said, her joy turning to anger. My body was never broken. It was the medicine. Lucia fixed me. At the name Lucia, Sebastian's face hardened. The suspicion won. We need to call Richard. Immediately. No. Isabelle, be rational. His voice rose. After everything that woman did to you, we need to know if you're okay. This could be a complication. Dr. Ashford came, his expression full of brotherly concern. He did an ultrasound right there in the living room. Isabelle lay on the sofa, gel on her stomach, Sebastian holding her hand too tightly. The black and white screen showed a small, fuzzy shape in her womb. Isabelle's heart soared. There. Do you see it? Ashford zoomed in. His face became very serious. He pointed at the screen. Isabelle, Sebastian, I see a mess. Right here. He turned to them, his eyes sad. This isn't a pregnancy. I'm so sorry. This is a fibroid, a growth. It's likely been aggravated, made to grow rapidly, by the trauma of that unlicensed massage. Could be dangerous. We need to schedule a procedure to remove it. The world dropped out from under Isabelle. No, she whispered. You're lying. I feel it. I know it's a baby. Sebastian looked from his wife's desperate, furious face to his brother-in-law's calm, medical certainty. He wanted, more than anything, to believe the miracle. to believe his wife. But he looked at the screen. He trusted the machine. He trusted the degree. He trusted family. He squeezed Isabelle's hand. His voice was soft, torn. Isabelle, Richard is a doctor. He's trying to keep you safe. Isabelle looked at her husband and saw a stranger. She pulled her hand away. The 2 lines on the test, which meant everything, now meant nothing to him. Her joy was locked away, replaced by a cold, hard fight. The baby was real, but now she was its only protector. The pressure began the next day. Dr. Ashford sat with them in the living room, his voice calm and reasonable. The risks are too great, Isabelle. This type of rapid growth, it could be precancerous. The procedure is simple. We schedule it for Friday. Isabelle sat perfectly still on the sofa, her hands folded over her belly. No, Sebastian paced. Isabelle, please. Listen to him. I am listening, she said, her eyes fixed on Ashford. I hear a man who told me for 15 years that I could not get pregnant. Now that I am, he tells me it's a tumor. Why should I believe him now? Ashford gave a sad, professional smile. The grief is making you irrational. I understand. But Sebastian must be strong for you. He turned to Sebastian. The consent forms are at my office. Bring her in Friday morning. After he left, the silence was thick. He's family, Isabelle, Sebastian said, pleading. He only wants what's best for you. What's best for me, she said slowly, standing up, is for you to believe me, not him, your wife. She walked to the desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a stack of papers. She walked back and placed them on the coffee table with a soft, final sound. Sebastian looked down. His face went white. The top page read, Petition for dissolution of marriage. What is this? It's my choice, Isabelle said, her voice steel. You have a choice too. Sign those papers and let me leave with my baby. Or tear them up, cancel that surgery, and fight for us. He stared at her as if she'd grown horns. You'd divorce me? Over this? You'd kill my child over a lie? She shouted, the control finally breaking. Yes, Sebastian. I will leave you. I will take nothing. I will live anywhere. But I will not let you or that man put a knife near my baby. Sebastian's anger flared. You are sick. He's trying to save your life. Get out, she screamed, pointing to the door. Get out of this room. You stand with him? Then you are not my husband. You are the man who is trying to murder my child. Her words were bullets. Sebastian stumbled back, shocked by her fury. He looked from the divorce papers to her furious, tear-streaked face, to her hands protectively cradling her stomach. He turned and walked out, the papers left untouched on the table. Isabelle sank to the floor, shaking. She wrapped her arms around her belly, where a deep, warm flicker pulsed inside her. She was alone, but she was not powerless. She spoke to the life inside her, a fierce, quiet promise. I see you. I feel you. No one will touch you. She took a deep, ragged breath. The fear was still there, but beneath it was something solid, something unbreakable. The grieving woman was gone. In her place was a mother. The battle had begun, and for the first time she knew she would win it. The mansion became a fortress of silence. Isabelle stayed in her rooms. Sebastian stayed in his. The divorce papers lay on the table untouched. But life grew. Sebastian saw it. He noticed the new color in Isabelle's cheeks when she walked in the garden. He saw the gentle curve of her belly slowly hardening beneath her dresses. One evening, he saw her jump, then smile softly, placing a hand on her side. Kick. His mind, so sure of Richard's science, suddenly filled with doubt. Tumors don't kick. His sister, Victoria, came often. Her voice was sweet poison. Richard is so worried, Sebastian. That mass is getting so large. It's dangerous. You need to be strong and make the hard choice for her. But Sebastian was watching his wife bloom. He started to hate the word mass. Twice a month, Isabelle went out. She said she was shopping. But Sebastian had a driver follow her once. The car went to the county jail. The report sat on his desk. Mrs. Thornfield visits inmate Lucia Reyes. She was getting advice from a prisoner, from the woman he'd accused. One afternoon, he confronted her in the hall. "I know where you go." She met his eyes, unafraid. "Good. Then you know I am getting the only honest help I have ever had. She's a criminal. She's the reason you are going to be a father." Isabelle shot back, her hand on her rounded stomach. The truth of it hung between them. That night, Sebastian sat alone in his study. He saw two futures. One where he trusted his family, did the right medical thing and lost his wife forever. One where he trusted the woman carrying his child and risked everything. Isabelle's water broke at 3 in the morning. A gush of warm fluid, then a contraction that stole her breath. She knew this was it. She also knew she would not get in a car. She called Sebastian's phone. When he stumbled into her room, bleary with sleep, she was on her hands and knees on the floor, breathing through another wave of pain. "It's time," she gritted out. "Call the hospital. Tell them we're coming." For a second, hope flashed in Sebastian's eyes. Maybe this was the return to normal. He reached for her. "Okay, let's go. I'll call Richard." "No!" Her scream was pure animal instinct. The contraction peaked, and she clutched the bedpost, knuckles white. Not him. Never him. She locked her wild, pain-filled eyes on him. "You get Lucia. You bring her here, or I will have this baby alone on this floor and you will never, ever see it." He stood frozen, a man torn in two. The logical part, the part that obeyed authority, screamed that this was madness. The other part, the part that had watched his wife glow and felt the phantom kicks through her belly, saw the undeniable truth of this labor. Another contraction hit. Isabelle cried out, a raw, guttural sound he had never heard. It decided him. He ran. He called his lawyer, his connections, screaming into the phone to pull every string. Pay any bond. Get Lucia Reyes released now. He sent his fastest car to the jail. The next hour was a blur of agony and waiting. Isabelle labored in their bed. Sebastian held her hand, helpless, wiping her brow. As the pains came faster and harder, she pushed him away. "I need her," she sobbed between gasps. Just as the sun began to lighten the sky, the bedroom door burst open. Lucia stood there, still in her gray jail clothes, her face pale with fear and confusion. For a second, she and Sebastian stared at each other across the room. The billionaire and the prisoner. Isabelle reached a hand out, weeping. "Lucia!" Lucia flew to her side, all hesitation gone. Her hands, which Sebastian had seen as instruments of harm, went to Isabelle's belly, feeling, assessing. She spoke in soft, rapid Spanish, words of encouragement. She guided Isabelle's breathing, positioned her pillows, her touch sure and gentle. Sebastian watched from the corner, an outsider. He saw the way Isabelle instantly calmed under Lucia's care, the way she trusted her completely. He saw the fierce concentration on Lucia's face, the sweat on her brow, the pure, selfless focus. This was not a criminal. This was a midwife. The final stage was a storm. Isabelle screamed, Lucia coached, and Sebastian felt the world narrow to this room, to this pain, to the terrifying precipice of life. With one last, primal push from Isabelle and a guiding pull from Lucia, the baby slid into the world. For a heart-stopping second, there was silence. A purple, slippery, silent little body. Then Lucia turned the baby, cleared its mouth with her finger, and gave a small pat on the back. The sound that followed split the universe. A sharp, indignant, perfectly healthy wail. A cry of pure life. Time stopped. The sound echoed off the marble and the high ceilings, a sound the mansion had never known. Sebastian's legs gave out. He collapsed to his knees on the carpet. All the certainty, all the trust in credentials, all the arrogant faith in his brother-in-law's word. It shattered like glass under the weight of that single cry. It was not the cry of a tumor. It was not the product of fraud. It was his son. He looked from his screaming, perfect son to Lucia, who was weeping as she placed the baby on Isabelle's chest. He looked at his wife, radiant with exhausted joy, staring in wonder at the child they made. The truth was not in a medical file. It was in the room, crying in his wife's arms. He had been wrong. He had imprisoned an angel. He had nearly killed his own child. As the baby's cries filled the silent palace, Sebastian Thornfield, the billionaire who controlled everything, broke down and sobbed, shattered by the cry of truth. The morning after the birth, Sebastian left his wife and newborn son sleeping. He walked into his study a changed man. The blind trust was gone, burned away by the sound of his son's cry. In its place was a cold, clear fury. He called his private security team and his most ruthless lawyer. "I want everything," he said, his voice quiet and dangerous. "Every medical record from the last 15 years. Every prescription. Every bill. And pull the Thornfield family trust documents. Now." The investigation was swift and surgical. First, the toxicology report. An independent lab analyzed the history of Isabelle's medications. The findings landed on Sebastian's desk by noon. His lawyer pointed a steady finger at 2 highlighted drug names. "This one suppresses ovulation. This one creates a hostile uterine environment. Prescribed together for over a decade, they are not a fertility protocol. They are a contraceptive protocol. It would have been medically impossible for her to conceive while taking these." Sebastian felt the paper crinkle in his tightening fist. 15 years. 15 years of hope, injections, and despair. Orchestrated. Then the trust documents. His lawyer laid out the clause written generations ago. Upon the death of the primary beneficiary without a living, biological heir recognized before the court, the majority of the voting shares and the trust's principal pass to the children of the sibling line. Sebastian was the primary beneficiary. His sister, Victoria, was the sibling. "If you had died without a child," the lawyer said slowly, "or if a child was not legally recognized, your fortune would have passed to Victoria's children, controlled by Victoria and her husband. Her husband, Dr. Richard Ashford." The pieces locked together with a sickening final click. He didn't summon them. He went to them. He found his sister and brother-in-law in the sunroom of their own luxurious home, drinking coffee as if the world weren't rotten. "Sebastian!" Victoria stood, a perfect smile on her face. "We heard the wonderful news. A healthy baby boy. We're so relieved Isabelle is okay after that traumatic ordeal." Sebastian didn't return the smile. He threw the toxicology report onto the glass table between them. It slid to a stop in front of Richard. "Explain that." Richard's face went carefully neutral. He didn't look at the paper. "Sebastian, you're emotional. The stress of the birth." "You poisoned my wife," Sebastian said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "For 15 years. You made her sick with hope while you fed her despair. You sat in my home, ate at my table, and called it treatment." Victoria's smile tightened. "Don't be dramatic. Richard is a brilliant doctor. That woman, that maid, she clouded your judgment with her primitive. She gave me a son." Sebastian roared, the calm shattering. He turned the full force of his rage on his sister. "And you, my own blood, you watched Isabelle weep every month. You held her hand and told her to trust the science. And all along, you were counting the days until my fortune was yours." He threw the trust documents next. Victoria's eyes flicked to the highlighted clause. Her face fell, the mask finally slipping. It was just business, Sebastian," she said, her voice suddenly small and sharp. "You were never supposed to marry her. You were supposed to marry someone from our world, have a proper family, not waste everything on that baron." She stopped, seeing the murder in his eyes. Richard stood, adopting a stance of wounded authority. "You have no proof of intent. Medical decisions are complex. I was managing a difficult case." "You're not a doctor," Sebastian spat. "You're a thief, a fraud. And you," he looked at Victoria, "you are a stranger to me." The full, sickening truth lay bare in the sunlit room. It wasn't a medical mistake. It was a calculated, 15-year conspiracy of greed, fueled by family jealousy and dressed in a white coat. Sebastian looked at their guilty faces, the people he had loved and trusted most. "Your business is now with my lawyers and the district attorney," he said, turning to leave. "Do not come near my wife. Do not look at my son. You are dead to me." He walked out, the last of his old life burning to ash behind him. The only thing that remained real was the cry of his son, and the hands of the woman who had saved him. Justice was swift and merciless. Dr. Richard Ashford's medical license was revoked. He and Victoria were charged with conspiracy, fraud, and aggravated assault. The civil suit would strip them of every asset they owned. Sebastian ensured the case was public, a scorched earth lesson to anyone who dared look at his family again. But the victory felt like ash. Couldn't give back the 15 years. The christening of Leo Sebastian Thornfield was held not in a cathedral, but in the sun-drenched garden of the estate. The air, once heavy with silence, was now filled with the rustle of leaves and the soft murmur of a small, chosen crowd. The biggest change stood near the altar. Lucia's entire family, her frail, smiling father, her siblings with their wide, awestruck eyes, had been flown in from Mexico. They stood in their best clothes, a tapestry of warmth and humble joy amidst the refined wealth. When the priest asked for the godparents, Isabelle spoke clearly. Lucia Reyes. Lucia, in a simple sky-blue dress, not a maid's uniform, stepped forward. She cradled Leo with a natural grace, her tears falling onto the white christening gown as the holy water touched his brow. It was a sight that silently corrected the world's wrongs. After the ceremony, Sebastian asked for everyone's attention. His usual commanding presence was gone, replaced by a palpable, shaking vulnerability. He stood before his wife, his son, and the woman he had wronged, a microphone in his hand. "I have built empires," he began, his voice thick. "I have made decisions worth billions. But I was, for most of my life, a blind and arrogant fool." He looked directly at Isabelle, his eyes swimming. "Isabelle, my wife, you tried to tell me. You screamed the truth at me, and I called it hysteria. I chose the word of a liar in a lab coat over the wisdom of my own heart, which was you. I am so sorry I did not believe you. I am sorry I made you fight for our child alone. I will spend the rest of my life striving to be the man you saw when you said, 'I do.'" Isabelle's tears flowed freely, but she held his gaze, finally seeing the man she'd hoped for. Then Sebastian turned to Lucia. He physically trembled. He stepped down from the small podium, walked to her, and then, in front of everyone, the billionaire knelt on the grass at the maid's feet. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. "Lucia," he said, his voice breaking completely, "I took your kindness and called it a crime. I saw your healing hands and saw only danger. I locked you in a cage for 9 months for the crime of giving me my son." A sob racked his body. "You had nothing, and you risked everything. I had everything, and I was too much a coward to see it. I stole 9 months of your life with your family. I can never give that back. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I will spend every day of my life making sure you and your family know no want, no fear, ever again. Thank you for saving my family when I was too stupid to see it was mine to save." Lucia, crying, shook her head. She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You stood up at the end, Senor Sebastian. You brought me to her. You gave me my family back, too. That is enough." Finally, he looked at the tiny, sleeping Leo in Lucia's arms. He reached out a single, shaking finger, and his son's perfect little hand curled around it. "And to you, my son," he whispered, the microphone forgetting him. "Thank you for your first cry. It was the sound that broke your foolish father and remade him." He stayed on his knees, weeping openly, until Isabelle came and knelt beside him, and Lucia leaned down, placing Leo in his arms. The three of them formed a silent, tear-soaked circle of forgiveness on the grass. Later, the grand mansion was quiet, but not with the old silence. It was the peaceful quiet of a resting household. Sebastian stood in the doorway of the nursery, unseen. The room was softly lit, not by a crystal chandelier, but by a small lamp shaped like a moon. Inside, Isabelle sat in a rocking chair, humming. Lucia sat on the floor nearby, sorting baby clothes. The baby, fed and content, slept in his mother's arms. This was not a billionaire's showcase. It was a home. It was messy with love, warmed by forgiveness, and fortified by a bond that had been forged in fire. Isabelle looked up and saw him watching. She didn't smile, but her eyes were soft. She nodded him in. Sebastian entered, not as an owner, but as a guest granted a sacred privilege. He did not try to take the baby. He simply knelt by the rocking chair, resting his head against Isabelle's knee, his eyes on his son's peaceful face. Lucia continued her work, a quiet, accepted presence in the family circle. God had answered their prayers, not with more medicine or money, but with a truth so simple it had to be whispered by a maid. That love is not about power, but about paying attention. And sometimes the greatest strength is found in getting on your knees.
If this story hit you, do 3 things right now. Subscribe. New stories like this every day. Comment where you're watching from. I read them all. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. See you in the next story.